who it is. Y'all know it's your girl, Ash, baby. I am here, y'all. Happy Tuesday. We have made it. Y'all, happy Tuesday. I am here. I am live. I'm in full effect, even though I'm in a lot of pain right now. Y'all probably can't see, but my pillow is behind me. Y'all, I've been having back pain these last few days, but anyway, but I'm here. Uh, y'all, I'm all discombobulated. Let me get everything set up. But anyway, happy Tuesday. Y'all, welcome back to another episode of Black Girl Interrupted. Y'all already know it's your girl Ash. Y'all know how I get down. Y'all know what I do. But tonight's conversation is real near and dear to me, as you can see, hence the purple. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month for those that do not know. So I thought I felt it was right to come and sit down and have this conversation about domestic violence because not only does it affect women, but it affects men as well, children as well. And in these recent months, we've been seeing a lot of domestic violence cases result in the death of not only men but women too. So uh, y'all already know, like I say, it's very fitting for me to jump on tonight and talk about domestic violence awareness and to let you know that if you are a victim, if you are experiencing a domestic violence situation, please know that there is help, there is resources out there for you. Um, man, and this is very near and dear to me because I am a domestic violence abuse survivor. So a lot of y'all already know my story. Some of y'all don't know, but we're here to talk about that tonight. But y'all already know what I do before I even get started. Y'all know I have to do my mental health check-in. I have to check in with y'all. I have to make sure that you guys are in a great mental space, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I always have to do that because if I don't, who will? Um, man. But anybody that, like I said, if you are in a domestic violence situation, please know that there is help out there. Please know that there are a lot of resources that can get you out of those situations. Like I say, in recent months and weeks, we've seen a lot of people that are not able to get out of these domestic violence situations. But before we even jump into tonight's conversation, I got to do my mental health check-in. Again, I have to make sure that everyone is good. I need to make sure that you're straight. I always have to jump on. I have to encourage you. I have to empower you. I have to uplift you. So before we even jump into tonight's conversation, y'all know I always play something to help get you going. So before we even jump into tonight's conversation, here we go. Let's go.
Life is not easy at all. There's going to be challenges. You're going to get beat down. That's the way life is.
You sort of put a mask on your face and you go home and lay in your bed when no one's looking at you, when you don't have to impress anybody and you're yourself. And fear comes in. Maybe you don't know for sure what's going to be happening in the future and it scares you. Just that fear paralyzes you. And I just want to ask you today, do you think you have hope?
At some point, everything's going to go south on you. Everything's going to go south and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Now you can either accept that or you can get to work. That's all it is. You just begin. You do the math. You solve one problem and you solve the next one.
And it doesn't matter how you get knocked down in life, because that's going to happen. All that matters is that you got to get up.
You have to get up.
Whatever experience you're having right now, it has not come to stay. It has come to pass. Sometimes you have to just back up and go within yourself and pray and meditate and recharge your batteries. Go away, clear your head, and then come back and look at it from a different vantage point. Don't operate while you are under the spell or the effect of what's going on. Don't allow your emotions to control you. We are emotional, but you want to begin to discipline your emotion. If you don't discipline and contain your emotions, they will use you. You don't have to force yourself or motivate yourself to think negatively, to be depressed, to beat yourself up over the head, to feel loaded with guilt. You don't have to make any effort to do that. Your mind is on automatic. It will do that by itself. But if you want to begin to move into your own personal greatness, you've got to be willing to go against the tide. You've got to be willing to harness your will and say, in spite of this, I'm in control here. I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to let this destroy me. I'm coming back.
You ask me, bro, what do you want? Man, I want to be diamond. Tell me something I don't know. Everybody wants it. But the raw reality of it is everybody don't get it. And the crazy thing is, if you want it, you can get it. It's not like somebody is stopping you, holding the gun to your head and telling you you can't get it. It's a matter of will. It's a matter of hard work. It's a matter of sacrifice. It's a matter of dedication. It's a matter of commitment.
The difference is not the genetic code, the potential. It's a guy that's willing to get knocked down, finally tested on fortune, stand back up. The perseverance to see it through. The never say die attitude.
We know the battle ahead. We know the journey ahead is going to get tough. We know we're going to face obstacles. We know it's going to be some discomfort. We know they're going to try to break us. We know they're coming for us. We know that's going to happen already. So let's make up in our minds before the battle that we're going to be victorious.
Don't cry to give up. Cry to keep going. Don't cry to quit. You already in pain. You already hurt. Get a reward from it. At the end of pain is success. You're not going to die because you're feeling a little pain.
You tell yourself, I won't give up. When that depression hits you, come out of nowhere, you tell yourself, I won't give up.
There's no guarantee that because somebody is now down on their luck, they can never come back. Who can guarantee that you can't make it? That you can't have your dream? Who can guarantee that you can't do what you want to do? No one can do that. No one can predict that. You don't know what the possibilities are for your life.
Because if you're willing to go through all the battling you got to go through to get to where you want to get, who's got the right to stop you? It's your right to listen to your gut. It ain't nobody's right to say no after you earn the right to be where you want to be and do what you want to do.
All we need to do is we look at our dreams. As we get ready to hit the floor, I'm blessed and highly favored.
I don't care if you're sick. I don't care what you're going through. If you're not dead, he ain't through with you yet. As long as you waking up, you still in the game. As long as you alive, you can still make it happen. As long as that breath in your nostrils, boo, you still in the game. You still can win. Now get your butt up.
I don't know, for some reason, every time I watch these videos that I share, it touches me some kind of way. Like I said, I always try to encourage somebody, try to empower, uplift, pour into somebody because you never know what a person is going through. They may smile on the outside, but on the inside, they may be slowly dying. Again, they may be a drink away, a bullet away, a drive away, anything from ending their life. So I always try to make sure that before every episode that I always do a mental health check-in because like I say, not only is this Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we are still celebrating mental health awareness, in which you guys know I advocate for that every day. Not just because it's a particular month, but I advocate domestic violence, mental health. I always try to be on the front line, but I always like I said, I love to start my show where I'm encouraging somebody, where I'm loving on somebody, where I'm just letting someone know that regardless of how many times you fall down, get back up. Don't stay there. I know it may seem safe down at the bottom, but you look so much better at the top. And I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. So um, just know your mental health does matter. It may not matter to anybody else, but it does matter to me. I would rather you call me or reach out to me than for me to be standing over your casket because you opted to take your life. So this is why I do this. This is why I stand firm and stand tall in everything that I do. So Just know that I love you. Whatever it is that you're going through, it's going to get better. I promise you. Okay. All right. So jumping into tonight's conversation again, y'all, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I know this is a very triggering conversation for lots of people. Me myself being a domestic violence abuse survivor. Again, I feel like it was very imperative for me to have this conversation because I know there are a lot of women and a lot of men that are in domestic violence situations and have nowhere to turn to, have nowhere to go, feel like they're lost, they're stuck. But just know there are ways to get out. Let me take a deep breath before we jump into this because I really don't want to get emotional tonight. I'm going to try. Y'all know I'm a big old crybaby, but I'm going to try. I promise. I'm going to try to hold my tears tonight for y'all. As we talk about domestic violence awareness. So let's go ahead and let's jump into the conversation. Here we go.
In the United States, the majority of women in prison have experienced physical or sexual violence. A number of those women are domestic violence survivors.
I was criminalized for defending my life.
Those in power are doing their own abusive behavior in a different way.
What I didn't need was to be sent away to a prison and be forgotten about by a society that failed me in the first place.
Every year in the United States, roughly 10 million people are abused by an intimate partner. The CDC defines intimate partner violence as abuse or aggression that occurs in a romantic relationship. This can be a past or current relationship, and the abuse can take several forms, from stalking to emotional manipulation to physical or sexual violence.
Abusive persons are in need of power and control, and that manifests in many different ways.
This is Ruth Glynn, a survivor and the CEO and president of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. She says an abuser's efforts to exert power and control can range from restricting finances to isolating a person from their friends and family to threatening and inflicting violence.
This doesn't happen the day you meet this person. The day you meet this person, you think everything's going to be okay.
These controlling behaviors are often misunderstood by people who haven't experienced intimate partner violence, including those in the criminal legal system.
The first thing that people say, well, why don't you leave? And to me, that's ignorance because, they weren't trauma informed to know that oftentimes you can't leave. The person has become your sole provider. The person has messed you up mentally to where you just stuck.
This is Leah Faria. She's a survivor of domestic violence and the director of community liaisons and organizing at the Women's Community Justice Association. She served 21 years in prison for what she describes as defending her life against a man who physically assaulted her, triggering the years of abuse she had previously endured.
For me, I didn't think a safe option was to call 911. You're dealing with people who are not trauma informed.
Faria's fear of calling the police is common. The National Domestic Violence Hotline found in a 2021 survey that 92% of victims felt afraid or concerned about how law enforcement would react if called, and 39% felt less safe after calling the police.
One of the ways in which domestic violence survivors are criminalized is through the inability and or lack of training, particularly first responders who respond to domestic violence events, not understanding who the primary aggressor is. And then before you know it, the survivor may have been the one that is charged with that domestic violence and has to go through that process.
This practice is particularly common because of mandatory arrest laws, which exist in more than a dozen states and require police officers to arrest one of the involved parties when they respond to a domestic violence call.
The first time I had to call the police, the night of the incident, they just confirmed my worst suspicion. that I wasn't given the benefit of the doubt, that I was arrested.
This is Tracy McCarter, a Manhattan-based nurse who ended up fatally stabbing her estranged husband in what she says was an attempt to protect her own life after years of violent abuse.
I was arrested within minutes of them entering my home, without them asking a lot of questions, without them finding out that that was my home and that my estranged husband came to my home, even though a neighbor was telling them that he heard me yelling, "Get out, get out." I was the one arrested.
Arresting a victim for fighting back against their abuser is one of the most common ways survivors of domestic violence are criminalized. Other forms of criminalization include charging victims for failure to protect their children from witnessing or experiencing abuse, engaging in illegal activity under the threat of violence from their abuser, or threatening physical force against their abuser. When it comes to the criminalization of domestic violence survivors, Black and brown women are disproportionately arrested and incarcerated. Glenn says that first responders need to be better trained to respond to domestic violence calls.
Every police officer, every EMT, anyone that's doing a first response should have training, what we call DV 101, which is the dynamics of domestic violence.
McCarter argues that being able to identify domestic violence isn't the problem.
In my case, the police have ample evidence that I was subjected to abuse. They have, in my husband's own writings, his apologies to me for choking me, punching me, kicking me. I provided a video to them because I thought they just don't understand. That's all. The ADA comes to court, and in response to the video, she says that at some point it appears that my husband may have choked me, but it would have been for a brief time. And I thought at that point, it doesn't matter. They know I'm a victim of domestic violence. That's not what they're interested in. The only way that I was going to be a victim in their eyes if I was the one who ended up dead.
Survivors and advocates describe going through the criminal legal system after surviving intimate partner violence as another form of abuse.
I pretty much knew, like right off the bat, that the detectives were able to detect that I was somebody that was abused. And instead of providing me with some kind of support, they pretty much harbored on that, which honestly further re-traumatized me.
This system, it doesn't have a place for us. It can't be reformed. It only needs to be destroyed. And then let's build something that's community-based, that allows people freedom, that allows people to heal.
From a policy perspective, there is so much more we can be doing. Yes, we've moved in a lot of good ways, but we still have gaps in resources.
Those gaps in resources can look like limited availability in transitional housing for survivors, or a lack of funding for intervention and prevention programs. Still, some states like California have made policy strides, enacting legislation that expands legal protections for survivors who have been criminalized. But Glenn says there also needs to be a shift in culture.
From a public relations and public awareness perspective, we don't do enough of just having these very public conversations about what domestic violence is and what is our part in it.
Why aren't we offering to set you up in housing, safe housing, away from that abusive situation? Why aren't we offering childcare to people who find themselves stuck? Why aren't we allocating money that is spent on policing to actually keeping people safe and protected in their communities prior to these interactions getting to that point?
Change is a movement. Right? Change is created by people who have a desire to see things differently. And if we really want to get to like public safety, we really want to get to a lower recidivism rate, if we really want to get to a better society, we have to work together and we have to do it, you know, in unison, and we just have to just do it.
When it comes to domestic violence, we're not protected. Just watching that video takes me back to my very first encounter of experiencing domestic violence, and that was from my father. And then I ended up in a very similar relationship with another man that physically abused me every day for like 5 years, and I stayed. Javert says, hold on, let me read the comments. Javert says, you don't have to hold back. Jewel, hey sis, hold up. I'm gonna get these fingers together, baby. There you go. I got them, y'all. I got my little heart fingers together. Jewel says, the system fails these women daily. Is heartbreaking. Javert says, that was deep. She says, I refuse to call the police. She said, I'm grateful I got out. I didn't reach out for help, but I'm grateful when I was ready to talk about it. I had a great support team. I went through it when I was with a man at 17 and again with a female in my early 20s. So yeah, this is real. And again, I remember like I say, my very first encounter with domestic violence was at the hands of my father. Um, my father beat me to the point where I ended up in the emergency room the next day. Um, Child services got involved. I was removed from the household. He never went and served a day in jail. Uh, and then a couple of years, maybe about a year or so later, I ended up in a relationship with a man that was physically abusive to me every day. And when I say it didn't start out physical, it started out with the verbal. And that's considered domestic violence. I know when people say when you hear the word domestic violence, they automatically assume it's physical. It's not always physical. It could be mental, it could be verbal abuse. That's all domestic violence. And it doesn't just happen to women, it happens to children, it happens to men. And listening to these women talk, that's why I chose that video because women are often criminalized for protecting themselves. We look at Marissa Alexander, who was in Florida, who was sentenced to 20 years in prison for shooting a gun in the air. She didn't shoot at her husband, she shot in the air. And this woman was sentenced to 20 years in prison for, what did they say, endangerment of a child and something, all these ridiculous charges. And the sad part about her situation, although she's out of prison now, but they knew. And the husband admitted that he was beating her up, he was jumping on her. And she still went to prison. But that reminds me of my situation when I lived in Atlanta. And I was dating a guy um he was an alcoholic. And it was he came home drunk, and that was a trigger for me because the guy that I was with prior to even being with him, the one that I was in this domestic violence relationship with, was a drinker, a heavy drinker. And it triggered me. So he tried to jump on me, and absolutely, yes. Did I pull out a knife? Absolutely. Was I going to stab him? Absolutely. Because I was defending myself, I was protecting myself. But when the police came, we were both arrested, but I was charged with felony aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. I was charged, but I was the victim. I was charged. He was only charged with simple assault. Well, first they charged him with a felony, and then they dropped his down to a misdemeanor. He served no jail and time, got no probation or anything, but I was sentenced to 10 years. Probation. And I was the victim. So what does that tell you? And when they came, guns drawn, but I was charged the severest. Felony aggravated assault with a deadly weapon is what I was charged with. Because I was protecting myself. Because I was not going to allow this man to jump on me and put his hands on me. I would rather put you in a cemetery than to let you take my life. But listening to these women speak, that's the truth. And going back to what Jewel says, the system fails these women daily. It's heartbreaking, and it is. because I feel like if I'm protecting my life, I'm protecting myself from my abuser, why am I going to jail? Yeah, we see these cases, we see these stories where the men are not always the aggressor. We see this. We do. But just sitting and thinking back, we're seeing more cases of women being killed at the hands of their domestic partners, husbands, boyfriends, baby daddies. We're seeing this. I just what a few weeks ago, maybe we were talking about the young lady who was pregnant, who was 19 years old, who was killed by her boyfriend and stuffed in the trunk of her car. We see these stories every day. We hear these stories every day. We know people that are close to us, and yet we do nothing. They say, oh, you hear something, you see something, get involved. We've seen cases like that where people have tried to come in and de-escalate situations and end up losing their lives. We've seen police officers lose their lives trying to de-escalate domestic violence situations. But what can we do? Like I say, this topic is so close to home for me. It hits so close to home for me. I remember, what was that, maybe 2, 3 years ago when I shared my story. And I talked about how I stayed because I thought that was love. I still have the scars. Yeah. But I became a victor and not a victim. I stopped being the victim and I became the victor. It gets a little easier for me to talk about now. And it happened 20 something years ago. But again, what I don't understand is, why are there not more resources? Like the young lady said in the video, there's no funds allocated for domestic violence survivors. They keep saying, "Oh, go to the police, file a police report, file a restraining order." That piece of paper doesn't do anything. It's almost like it enhances them. It's almost like that makes them wanna come after you even more. Like the young lady in Mississippi that worked at Amazon. She had a restraining order against the ex-boyfriend, and he still came to the job and killed her at her job. We see this every day. Every day. I look at a lot of the statistics, and it says black women are 3 times as likely as white women to be fatally shot by an intimate partner. Black women. 3 times. And we're not saying it doesn't happen to white women. We're not saying that at all. But statistically, it says black women are 3 times as likely as white women to be fatally shot by an intimate partner. And we see this. We see this every day. We see this all the time. People remain silent. There's not enough resources. I keep hearing people say, "Oh, if you're in a domestic violence situation, you should just leave." Really? Do you really think it's that easy? It's not. And in those situations, if you've never been in a domestic violence situation, please don't speak and say what I could have or should have done. Because a lot of people don't understand the toll that it takes on you being a domestic violence victim. It's not easy to get out and leave. A lot of them know where you hang out, they know your friends. Police don't protect you. You leave, guess what? They come where you are, you go right back. And then when there's children involved, oh yeah, you can't leave. These men go and they manipulate and they say, oh, she's kidnapped the children. And guess what? You got to go right back into your situation. Protect us. Help us get out of these situations because it's not easy. A lot of us do leave. A lot of us do get out. But a lot of them don't stay out for long because the man or the woman may find you. And then they unalive you. Even though you have a restraining order, even though you've been to court, you've done this, you've done that. And this is just not in heterosexual relationships. This happens in lesbian relationships. This happens in bisexual relationships. It doesn't matter. It happens. But when we do all of that, are we really truly protected? It's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Again, referring back to Marissa Alexander's situation. She was licensed to have a gun. She didn't shoot at him, she shot in the air. And yes, the children were upstairs, but what was she supposed to do? Was she just supposed to sit there and allow this man to pummel on her the way that he does? We see this. You look at this statistic. You have 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men that experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking. We experience this. Men go through this. Women go through this. Children go through this. Where's the protection? Why say protect yourself? And when we do, we go to jail. We get arrested. We see this all the time. The victims are never protected. And like the young lady said in the video, were you really going to constitute me as a victim when I was dead? That's what happened. I remember when people used to not be afraid to tell people, hey, I need help. Can I come stay here for a few days? Now, you don't know who you could trust. People don't talk anymore. People don't tell what goes on in their households because you know what? People have this mentality, oh, that's your problem. Don't bring that over here. Until you're standing over that person in a casket. Then it's, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have did this. I should have did that. Where are the safe spaces? Why are we not creating safe spaces for our friends or loved ones that are experiencing situations just like this? Domestic violence. Why are we not protecting each other? Why, if I come to you and I say I'm in a domestic violence situation, can you help me? Why are we not helping? I don't understand. But then you're standing over their casket, you're crying, oh my God, I should have done. You could have. You had the opportunity. I get it. It's not your business, but where's the protection? Why are we not protecting one another? It's easier said than done. I get it. I get it, everybody. I do. But we need safe spaces. If I'm in a situation, I need to be able to come and talk to you and trust that you're not going to tell the person that I'm trying to leave where I'm at. But then too, we also have to stop going back to those situations too, thinking it's going to get better. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. It doesn't matter how much you talk to them, how much you beg. They're not going to change unless they want to change. I know firsthand. I remember the very first time he slapped me, I remember. And he would do this in front of his friends, in front of his family members, and no one did anything. And I would leave. Oh, I'm sorry. I love you. I'm not going to do it again. And I would go right back. Everything would be okay. Maybe a week or two, then it's right back. I can remember when I worked at McDonald's and he would come to my job. And I thought that was love. I remember the day that he drugged me off the bus, beat me up at the bus stop, and sent me home, my hair all over my head. I'm looking like I'm beat up, and I had to go home I went home like that. Spit on me. I remember having an asthma attack, and he left me in the middle of the street. Cussed me out. I don't know what the fuck you brought your ass out here for anyway. And did it. Yeah. Almost died. But I stayed. Until it got to the last straw when he threw boiling water on me. Yeah. Burned my face, my neck, my arm. I still have the scar on my arm. My face healed. As you could see, it healed. I still have the little mark right there. But I remember having to call my best friend at the time. I need you to come pick me up. I remember waking up the next day, eyes swole shut. I'm blistered all here, my arm, and having to go to my mother's job like that with sunglasses on. I remember that. And even still, y'all, and you know, this is my truth. I remember still going to see him in jail after he was arrested. Remember that. I do. I was in love, at least I thought I was, y'all. Thought I was in love. He begged me. I didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident. I promise I didn't do this on purpose. But he still had mind control over me. Still. He was able to still manipulate me. And I went in, I talked to the district attorney, dropped the charges. But they told me it wasn't up to me. It was up to the district attorney because they were the state had picked up the charges. He got out of jail and I never spoke to him again. And I think that was the turning point for me. Let me not even say I know that was the turning point for me. When I was on high alert. I was on guard. Which led to another relationship. Again, where I got arrested. And I was charged with felony aggravated assault, all because I was defending myself. And this happened in Atlanta. Cobb County, to be exact. Yeah. So when I see these videos and I see these stories, it makes me sad. Because you keep saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. But you don't give us additional resources. And there are women that have to stay and endure these situations. They have children, they can't leave. You know, the man is the breadwinner. But then the courts, you don't protect women. You don't. One little bitty piece of paper that means nothing. And you have to fight to get that. You have to prove that this person, and I think that's sad, that I have to go to court and I have to prove that this person is abusive to me and I need this person to stay away from me, even though there's been countless police reports. You see countless times that the police or law enforcement has been to the home and you still won't grant me a protective order or restraining order. I don't understand. But the moment we take a life, whether it's a man or a woman, now you want to put me behind bars. When I asked you to help me, I asked you, I begged. I need help out of this situation. Why? Jules says, once we react to being abused, we become the villain for simply protecting ourselves. Jules says, we have to be our sister's keeper, back in the keeper in this day and age, because it seems Black women are the most hated by our Black men. I pray we get back to truly loving on one another. I'm with you. Because we don't. Jules says, folks don't talk because folks are always looking for something to gossip about, and therein lies one of the problem, especially in the Black community. Absolutely. And that's what I mean when I say, what happened to the safe space? What happened to being able to come to you and I'm telling you, sis, I'm in this situation. I need help to get out. Can I really trust that you're not going to tell this person I'm trying to get away from where I'm at? And we see this all the time. Family members are telling, if I'm coming to you as you know, my mom, I'm saying, Mom, I need to get out of this situation. Please don't. And your mom is going back and is telling your husband or your boyfriend or your baby daddy or whoever you're with at the time, oh, she's here. She's there. They're coming to your job. Where's the protection? We've seen this. I gave you a prime example, the young lady in Mississippi who worked at Amazon, who had a restraining order. And the boyfriend still came onto the premises and unalived her at her job in the parking lot. Where's the security? If I've come to you and I've said, hey, this person is stalking me, this is my ex, this is A, this is B, this is C, where's the protection? I was looking at a story the other day. Young lady worked at a hospital. Ex-boyfriend was stalking her, was in the parking lot and everything. He ended up unaliving this young lady. And she had a restraining order, protective order and everything. We see this. But there's yet to be done. Mr. Lonnie says, I've seen violence among members of the clergy. It's usually covered up in the church. Exactly. You have these pastors that are abusive to their wives or their girlfriends or their children. We've seen this. Yet there's no protection. So what can we do as a community? Like I said, I'm going to always give y'all the receipts and statistics. You have 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men that have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. Yes, men are domestic violence victims as well. No, they don't talk about it. Men are victims too. I go back and I look at, let me show y'all this real quick. I go back and I look at this right here. Let me see if I can make it bigger, y'all. Let me see, can I make it a little bigger? I hope so. So it says, men and women, they say, are victims of some form of physical violence by an intimate partner within their lifetime. It says 34% of people who are injured by intimate partners receive medical care for their injuries. Only 30%, 34% of people who are injured receive medical care for their injuries. Only 34% of the people. Domestic violence accounts for 15% of violent crime in the United States. Domestic violence accounts for 15%. Then you look at here and it says 20,000 calls are placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide on a typical day. 20,000 calls. 500% increase the risk of homicide when a gun is present in a domestic violence situation. 500%. 72% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. I just read a story last week about this. 72% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. And then you look at 94% of the victims of these murder-suicides are females. Not black, not white, not Asian, not Latino, but females. 94%. And women between the ages of 18 and 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. Between the ages of 18 and 24. Then if you go back and you look at these statistics. Domestic violence, let me see, can I make this a little bigger, y'all? Domestic violence related homicide is a leading cause of death for pregnant women. I just brought y'all a story a couple of weeks ago about a 19-year-old young lady that was pregnant, was killed by her boyfriend and stuffed in the trunk of a car. She was pregnant, 19 years old. And then they say children are more likely to be killed by parents than strangers. Children. We see this. I brought y'all a show and I talked about these children, child abuse by their parents. Parents. And then if you look to the right, male domestic violence is severely underreported. Male domestic violence. I brought y'all the stories. I brought y'all the episodes. Men are domestic violence victims also. But no one discusses this because they believe it only correlates to women. No. Men are domestic violence survivors also. Men just don't talk about it because they're embarrassed. Because who's going to believe that a man is being abused by a woman? And again, y'all, it does not have to be physical. It could be verbal. It could be emotional abuse. That is all under the umbrella of domestic violence. I've heard some of I've heard some of you women and the way you speak to your boyfriends, your husbands, your baby daddies. I hear it. Not only do we have to protect our women, but we have to protect our men too. Men are victims too. And if you don't believe me, here we go.
Next up here tonight, taking action against domestic violence. And today, several local politicians and law enforcement leaders are bringing attention to a new domestic violence law. That new law went into effect October 1st, and it essentially speeds up the legal process to file a restraining order. Instead of sending the order by mail, as in the post office, text messages are now allowed to be sent to allow a victim to know exactly when the order is signed by the judge.
In Florida, there were 106,000 reported domestic violence offenses in 2020. And that was including more than 200 domestic violence murders.
State Senator Janet Cruz there sponsored that bill and got it passed, and she says 3 out of every 4 who are killed by their abuser are murdered when they attempt to leave the abusive relationship. The hope is that by speeding up this process, it can save lives. And while the majority of domestic violence victims are women, tonight we're diving deeper into cases where men are the victims. It's rare, but it does happen, and sometimes with deadly outcomes. ABC Action News reporter Michael Paluska tonight looking at 2 high-profile cases with local connections.
The knife entered Christian's chest in a downward angle to the depth of 3 inches.
Miami, a social media influencer arrested.
We are charging 26-year-old Courtney Taylor Clenny with 1 count of second-degree murder in Christian's death.
Miami-Dade County State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle telling the media at an August news conference all the signs were there. This fight in an elevator with Clenny and her boyfriend Christian Ambuseli is key evidence, along with constant noise complaints about violence.
It was a homicide.
In St. Petersburg, August 19th, Larry Jarrell is found inside the apartment he shared with his partner, Rhiannon Spicer, an eerily similar case where police say Jarrell was stabbed to death, the complaint showing that Spicer had a, quote, Google search history of, do you spend life in prison if you killed someone in self-defense?
Our advocates often have a very tough time that sometimes in abusive relationships, sometimes it happens within a 24-hour period that we'll get both partners in the relationship that reach out to us for help.
Christine Meister is the outreach program manager at the Spring of Tampa Bay. She did not comment on these 2 specific cases, but spoke in general about what she's experienced when it comes to domestic violence involving men as victims.
People look at men when they're the victims and they make the assumption that the man did something wrong. And there's a reason why they were the victim of domestic violence. Is that accurate?
So I think a lot of times when men are victims, they face additional biases, and a lot of that has to do with gender norms. Men have this expectation to be tough, to be more dominant in that relationship. And so when a man comes forward and says, no, this is what I'm experiencing in my relationship, I don't feel safe in this relationship, my partner is abusing me, or I have this coercive control, other people think, well, then you must not be a man.
Data reinforces that skepticism about men as victims. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 72% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. 94% of the victims of these murder-suicides are female, and 1 in 4 women, compared to 1 in 9 men, experience severe intimate partner physical violence.
Our advocates have that very tough time of, let's put gender aside and really take a look at what is happening in this relationship.
Documents show Spicer was arrested in November 2021 for domestic violence, again just weeks before Jarrell was found dead. No contact orders were also in place. In February, court records show that Jarrell was also arrested for domestic violence and pleaded no contest. The couple had 3 children together, and since Spicer's arrest, police still have more questions than answers, Spicer invoking her right to remain silent.
Every act of violence in a relationship is always an act of domestic violence. Those words, domestic violence, should have a decidedly ugly feel to them.
Back in Miami, authorities say they found no evidence to Clenny's claim that Ambuseli was the aggressor.
There's no physical evidence that led us to believe that she was actually physically harmed in any way.
No matter what, everyone agrees someone should or could have done something to stop it.
Men are often, unfortunately, unwilling to come forward as victims of domestic violence, or of intimate violence, that is sometimes called. The sequence of domestic violence events can be broken.
How do we come together as a society to fix this issue of domestic violence that keeps recurring?
From one aspect, you can look at it that we need to teach what healthy relationships look like in the first place. It's about recognizing that domestic violence is everybody's problem.
In St. Petersburg, Michael Paluska, ABC Action News.
And if you or someone you know is in a domestic violence situation, you can call this number on your screen right now, 1-800-500-1119. Or you can contact us here at abcactionnews.com/DV or on Facebook and Twitter.
So if we're looking at the statistics in the Black community, 53.8% of Black women and 56.1% of Black men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetimes. 53%. 53.8% of Black women and 56.1% of Black men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetimes. Really? Mind you, we only make up, what, 14, 15% of the population? So 53.8% of Black women and 56.1% of Black men have experienced psychological aggression. Or if you want to look at 31.8% of Black women and 16.8% of Black men have experienced one or more of the following intimate partner violence related impacts: being fearful, concern for safety, any post-traumatic stress disorders. That's what we see. Injury, need for medical care, housing services, victim advocate services, and/or legal services, missed at least one day of work or school, and contacting a crisis hotline. Those are the statistics if we're looking at the Black community. Again, we only make up, what, 14, 15% of the world. Black people do. So we have a comment that says, Jewel says it actually happens more than we think. It does. But men are afraid to talk about it because men are embarrassed, because men are never taken seriously when it comes to domestic violence situations. I remember when I first started talking about domestic violence, and I introduced the conversation where we talked about men, and I spoke on Dwayne Haskins, who was the former football player, for the Washington Redskins. Well, I'm so sorry, the Commanders now, who is now deceased, who was attacked by his wife in a hotel room. He had his tooth knocked out, and I remember some of the comments that people were saying, and let me not say people, but women were saying in regards to this young man's situation. They said, oh, maybe he deserved it. Oh, maybe next time he'll watch what he says to you. There were women that were actually applauding what this woman did to her husband. So when I did the show, I said, and I'm going to say this today, any person that co-signs with a woman putting their hands on a man or a man putting their hands on a woman, keep that same energy when it happens to you. That's all I'm going to say. Because if you don't want it to happen to you, stop standing by and co-signing when it happens to somebody else. Because when I say I was absolutely disgusted by the comments that I was reading when this happened, among some of the other stories that I've read where I've seen men have been victims of domestic violence, and some of you Black women co-sign on this. Y'all are applauding. Maybe he'll learn next time. That's good for him. That's what he gets. Really? Really? This is what you say to a person that is a victim of domestic violence? I hope you keep that same energy if it happens to you. And I'm gonna stand on that. I don't advocate for violence because I feel like no parties should put their hands on one another. Women, keep your hands to yourself. Men, keep your hands to yourself. But anybody that sits by and you co-sign this foolishness, keep that same energy when it comes to you. And I'm going to get off my soapbox on that one. But we see this all the time with men. More so we see this with women, but it happens to men. A really close friend of mine has admitted to me openly. He's been on in the comments of quite a few of my shows and has said I'm a victim of domestic violence. My wife was abusive to me. And men aren't taken seriously. Again, where are the safe spaces? Where are the resources for this? Why is it so hard to believe men can't be victims of domestic violence? And we know they are. I have seen it firsthand. I have seen how you women talk and disrespect men. I see this all the time. That's a form of abuse. I've seen it. I've heard it. Some of y'all that I follow on Facebook, I've seen the way you talk to your husbands. And I think it's sad. I think you need to go get some you need a psychological evaluation, because there's no way in the world, if you don't want to be talked to like that, if you don't want to be mistreated like that, stop doing it to other people. But again, people mimic what they see, because you've seen your moms talk to men this way. You men have seen your fathers talk to women this way. So you mimic this. You grow up thinking that this is acceptable behavior, and it's not. And a lot of you men that abuse women have daughters. And the minute something happens to your daughter, you ready to fight. Why? You doing it to their mother. So what's good for the goose can't be good for the gander? I don't understand. Please make this make sense to me. Because you're abusive to the mother, but you don't want anyone to be abusive to your daughter. Then you need to stop being abusive to the mother. And you women, stop being abusive to the fathers, because this is what you're teaching your daughters. You're teaching your daughters that it's acceptable to talk to a man that way, to slap a man. No, it's not. Domestic violence is not good either way. In a straight relationship, in a gay relationship, in polygamy, polyamorous relationship, it's not acceptable. So stop co-signing the foolishness. Because when it happens to you, now all of a sudden, oh, nobody wants to protect. Why? This is happening in real time, ladies and gentlemen. This is happening. We're seeing this far too often. What are we going to do as a community to help curb when it comes to domestic violence? We need to start creating safe spaces. We need to start providing better resources. We need to start trying to help people that want to get out of these situations before it's too late. We need to start recognizing the signs of domestic violence. Do any of y'all know the signs? Do you know what to look for? Can you be the protector for that person? Can you be the escape route for that person? Can that person trust you that you're not going to go and tell this person where they are when they try to leave? Think about these children, these babies. Can we somehow maybe physically get out of that mindset where, oh, that's not my business? Why? I get it. I understand. I really, truly do. We've seen cases where people have gotten involved to try to de-escalate domestic violence situation, and someone ends up losing their life. I get it. I know. I promise I do. But you don't have to directly start the conversation. If you hear them arguing next door, make a mention and say, hey, yeah, I heard y'all playing the video. Y'all were a little loud over there playing the game last night, huh? That's almost like you're letting the person know, hey, I know. And if you need me, I'm here. That's what we need to start doing. We need to be proactive. Police officers, these courts, these judges, please stop re-victimizing the victim. Because it's almost like you make it seem as if, oh, you should have never protected yourself. You unalive this person. This person was abusive to you, but You didn't have the right to take this person's life. Why? We just had the case in Atlanta a few weeks ago that I touched on, where the young lady was being brutally assaulted by her baby daddy. She had called the authorities 3 times. She ended up killing him, and she was sentenced to 10 years. Why? Why is this constantly happening? Again, it's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. They tell you to stand your ground, protect yourself, but when you do protect yourself, now you have to suffer the consequences. So which way does the law work? Is it for me or is it against me? Again, I look back at my situation. I was protecting myself. And I was charged. Felony aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And the only reason they arrested him was because they said we didn't know who the aggressor was. Really? Okay. So I was sentenced to 10 years for protecting myself. So I was supposed to allow this man to put his hands on me? Okay. Bet. Again, my very first experience with domestic violence started with my father. Got into another relationship like that. Got into another relationship like that. Until I became the victor, until I became the abuser. Very lethal with my mouth. Very verbally abusive to men. Bet a lot of you women won't admit that. I bet a lot of you men won't admit that either. But we see this all the time. I look back at, let me see if I could go back and bring it back up. Let's see if I can. Let me see if I could go back to the very first time that I spoke on domestic violence. Let's see if I could share. Let's see if it's going to allow me to share. Give me just one moment. Let me see if it. Let's see if I could get back where I share my story. I'm trying to get back because I don't want to show the whole video. I just want to. Let's see if I can get to it, y'all. Let me kind of take it back. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can share because I am going into the part where I'm asking, what are the signs? What are the signs? Let me see if I can share. Let me see if it's gonna let me know if y'all can see. Let me know if y'all can see the video. I hope. Okay, there we go.
I'm gonna pull it together tonight. I promise I'm gonna pull it together tonight. So what are the signs? When they start to talk about how you dress, that's a sign. Oh, that outfit makes you look too fat. Oh, that outfit makes you look too skinny. Oh, you don't look like Tyra Banks with that dress on. I don't know what the hell made you put that damn dress on. That's a sign. You know, if the least little thing you'll say to them sets them off, they may not hit you, but if they raise their hand to hit you, that's a sign of abuse. that's a sign, because it's about to escalate. From now, he's gone or she has gone from being mentally and emotionally abusive to you, that now I'm raising my hand to you, or I'm threatening you, or I'm telling you, you keep playing, I'm gonna kick your ass. If you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you. That's the signs. You know, listen to what they say. Listen to how they speak to you. Listen to how they are when you're around. Are they belittling to you? You know, that's the sign. You know, that's definitely a sign, you know. And then sometimes, you know, we see those signs and we chalk that up like, oh, he's not gonna do anything, or she's not gonna do anything. Oh, he's just talking, she's just talking. No. No. The first time that they raise their hand to you, you need to get the hell on down the road.
Exactly. Exactly. Don't wait around, because that's how things it escalates. He feel like he can do it one time, and you come back, he's gonna do it the second time. So, sis, let me ask you, and I know you're a domestic abuse survivor. So I want you to tell me your story. How did you two meet?
Okay. So I was 16 when I met him. 16, 15, 16.
Let me pause this. But I just wanted to jump into that little clip, because those are the signs of domestic violence. You know, when they start to the belittling, the berating, and then you start to see them raising their hands. Because it goes from, again, it starts verbal, where they're cussing you out and they're belittling you. They're telling you, oh, you're not this, you're not that. Then it goes into they're raising their hands to you, which means it has escalated to now it's going to get physical. Do they ever change? I don't know, because I'm not sticking around to find out anymore. But I wanted to just play that brief little clip. But I also want y'all to know my story. So give me just one moment. Let me kind of skip through some of this. But let me share. Give me just one moment. But here we go. Let me see if I can get it back. Let's see if I can get it back. And here we go. Let me make sure. All right, here we go.
It started to take a toll on me. I was so tiny.
Let me back up a little bit.
Oh, his brother was like, his brothers, you know, at the time, they were like, oh, you don't put your hands on her, you know, what did she do? And, you know, they stopped it. You know, I cried, I left. He apologized. I love you. I'm sorry. You know, I was drunk, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I forgave him. I went back. So I want to show you something. I really want to show you something. So the abuse continued. That's me. That's me. Let me remove that so you guys could see. That's me. I was 19 years old. I was about 97 pounds. That's how much the abuse started to take a toll on me. I was so tiny. But I love this man. But that's me. That's me.
So the abuse became so overwhelmed that you became stressed to the point where you lost a lot of weight, right?
I couldn't eat. It was like, I'm trying to really find a word. And that what's the word? I became an introvert, I guess, so to say. And that day that I took that picture, That night he whooped my ass.
Okay, so another sign of abuse. Did at any point he tried to isolate you from your family?
Oh yeah, my friends. I used to work at McDonald's, and he would come to my job, and he would sit in my job. I would say things like, if I saw a guy, and I would be like, "Oh, I like his shirt. Go be with that nigga then. Go be with him then." And all I said was, "I like the shirt." So I got to a point where when we would go places, I would just stay quiet. I would just kind of sit there. "What's wrong with you, Ash?" "Oh, nothing." Because I didn't want to do anything to provoke him. So yeah, absolutely. That night, if I go back and I look at that picture, sis, he whooped my ass that night. He sure did. I remember that day.
And I think a lot of men do that because they want to feel
Going back and rewatching that episode, that was from 2 years ago, and I'm just like, it doesn't sting as much as it used to as I go back and I listen to the story, as, I relive that moment or those particular moments in time. Just it gets easier for me to tell the story. It gets easier for me to share, because that is a part of my life that is over. I was finally able to break away from that relationship. I had 3 beautiful children. Um, I ended up in another relationship with another person that wasn't worth 2 nickels. But I finally broke away from that, and now I really feel like I'm in the happiest space ever in my life. As I like I say, as I go back and I look at, as I share my story about being a domestic violence survivor, it gets easier for me to talk about. Again, it doesn't sting as much as it used to. And I share my story to be an advocate for someone, to be a voice for someone that's afraid to speak, for someone that's afraid to share their story, because domestic violence is real. Like I say, I remember him leaving me in the middle of the street. I had an asthma attack, almost died. And I just remember him cussing me out and going to the hospital. He's there at the hospital with me. I remember that. And I tell that story because I want someone to know that I made it. A lot of women, a lot of men don't make it out of these relationships. They don't. But I made it. I survived. And I don't hold on to the remnants of that relationship, if that makes sense to you. I became a victor and no longer a victim, because being a victim kept me in the dark for so long. And if I hadn't have relinquished that, this man still would have had power over me 20 years later. But a part of me held on to that for the longest, until finally I was able to be free, until I was finally able to relinquish the power back to myself, because I could no longer allow this man to have control over me. Because yeah, you may have physically taken me down, but mentally I can't allow you to have that anymore. So when I tell my story, when I share, it doesn't hurt anymore. And I could say that wholeheartedly. And my eyes water and they tear up, because I made it. There are a lot of women that didn't make it. There are a lot of women that are still sitting in these domestic violence situations that don't know what to do. So I pray for them. I pray that they're able to get out of those situations. I pray for their children, because the children are subjected to these types of situations, and that's unfair to them. I say that to say I could no longer allow those men to have power over me. I forgave them a long time ago, even after the scars healed. I didn't forgive them for me. For them, I forgave them for me because I had to get my power back because I had allowed these men to take me down and I was at my lowest. So here we go as I continue the rest of my story.
And looking back at that,
Here we go.
it would have made me the woman I am today.
Here we go.
I really don't. It was hard. It's hard for me to look at that picture today and to know.
And to think, like, any moment that he laid his hands on you, it could have been your last. You know, so the first time women, you please leave because it may not be a next time. You may not get a chance to walk out that situation. You may not get a chance to tell someone, you know. So let me ask you, when, right, right, and I think men, and other women who have friends who are abusive, no matter what it is, or men who are abusive, I think they need friends around them who will call them out on that.
Absolutely. And that goes back to, yeah, you were 10 or 11 years old, sis, when it happened. So you were young. So you didn't know what to do. You know what I'm
I
saying?
didn't know what to do.
So it was like you were helpless in that situation. But there were people, in my situation, people stood around and they watched him do this. They watched him do this. You know what I'm saying? Hold on, we got one more. Hey, you're absolutely right, Sarah Artist.
We have to protect our black kings at all costs.
Absolutely. And in this day and age, we're not protected enough. You know what I'm saying? We're so disrespected. Black women, we are so disrespected. And as we go on, as I continue to, go on my journey and share my stories, I definitely want to, uplift each and every black woman. I can't uplift everybody, but I'm going to do the best that I can do because I want you to understand that you are worthy, that you are appreciated. Me during that time, I didn't feel worthy. I was depressed, and looking back at it, it was a lesson learned. I really don't want to say a lesson learned, but now I know what to look for.
Yeah, so at that point, you know not to be in a relationship with somebody who will do that to you. And that's what I'm saying. Being around people who I seen go through that, it taught me a lesson. It taught me, okay, when you start doing that, then you've seen that before. Don't you still want to take that shit? But it's easier said than done. Some women just don't. Some women are scared to leave, or some women don't know where to go. You know who they can talk to, because at this point he did isolated you from all your family. They feel like you can't come back because I told you so. When all I needed was moral support.
But it's like, it's so, and I tell people it's easier said than done.
Right.
It's easy to tell somebody to leave. But when this person has made you feel this big, You're scared to go because they made you feel like nobody's ever gonna want you. Nobody, ain't nobody gonna love you like me. Ain't nobody gonna want you. Look at how you look. I remember a time, because I'm an asthmatic. I remember a time I had an asthma attack and he left me in the street. I remember another time I was going home to go see my mom. I was getting on the bus and he beat me up at the bus stop. Tore my shirt. He spit on me. I had to get on the bus and ride home like that. But that wasn't enough to make me leave.
Was it just that you were scared? Or it was just more of your heart was in the relationship, okay? Or I love her just that much to stay.
It was a mix of all three. And even if you go back to my first episode, and I talked about I had never seen what it was like for a man to love a woman. So I didn't know. I didn't grow up in a situation where my father was healthy to my mother, or ever see my mom in a healthy relationship. My mom was in one healthy I really wouldn't call it healthy because my mom dated this man for like 2 years and then come to find out he was married. But he was good to me and my sister. Like he was a father figure. You know what I'm saying? So it says, please encourage our young ladies to value themselves.
I smile because I look at how far I've come. That was 2 years ago when I shared my story. My sister says, I'm so sorry you had to experience that, sis. You're a survivor. Absolutely. I stopped allowing that situation define who I was as a person and as a woman. And by being able to share and get that out was the best thing that I could have ever done. Because it opened the door for other women to reach out to me to share their stories. So this is why I do what I do. This is why I bring these types of conversations to Black Girl Interrupted. Because these are my stories. These are my situations. And I want women and I want men to know, especially men and women of color, you're not alone in these situations. You're not the only person that has encountered this. You're not the only person that has gone through this. This is why I do what I do. And being able to look back at that episode and listen, wow. Wow. I've overcome a lot. I'm a survivor. I'm a winner. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about Black Girl Interrupted is that I want Black men and I want Black women to know that you're special. I want you to know that you're worthy. I want you to know that you're loved and that no matter how many obstacles you encounter, you're always going to be a winner. That's why I do what I do. That's why it was imperative to bring you tonight's episode, because even though October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we need to address this issue every day. Because it doesn't just happen in October. Again, we see these domestic violence situations every day on the news. Every time you turn on the TV. I just saw a story a couple of weeks ago. Young lady, a law student in California who was unalived by her boyfriend. Fiance, I'm so sorry, he was her fiance. Cut up her body. But then I look at the women and the men that are stuck in these situations. Don't know where to go. Don't know where to turn. especially men, because men aren't believed when they say, "Oh, you're a domestic violence victim." Oh, men can't be victim. Yeah, they can. I've given you the resources. I've given you the receipts. I've given you the statistics when it comes to domestic violence. You look at right here. Let me see, can I move this out of the way? It says 10 million adults experience domestic violence annually in the US. 10 million adults a year. Let me see, can I move this out of the way? Let me try to make this a little bigger. But you look at what domestic violence entails. Domestic violence in an intimate relationship can include willful intimidation and or threats, physical and or sexual assault and battery, emotional and or psychological abuse. Domestic violence in an intimate relationship can include criminal harassment. It can include economic abuse, example, power over finances to control. We see this. And then it also includes a repetitive pattern of controlling dominance. Domestic abuse victims by gender, 24% men, 76% women. One in 5 women have experienced domestic sexual violence in their lifetime. Examples could be rape, repercussions for refusing sexual advances, etc. 48% of victims experience psychological abuse. At least one psychologically aggressive behavior by an intimate partner. And that's men and women. 48% of victims. And domestic violence affects all communities, regardless of your age, your gender, your socioeconomic status, your sexual orientation, race, religion, or nationality. It doesn't have a race, a gender, creed, none of that on there. Domestic violence. But if we go back to the statistic that I posted for you guys, Black women are 3 times as likely as white women. Black women, 3 times to be fatally shot by an intimate partner. Black women. We see this all the time, y'all. We see this. You guys ask, what can you do? This is how you can get help for domestic violence.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
All right. So for anyone that is in a domestic violence situation, here's the phone number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I'll leave it up for a moment just so you guys can take note of the phone number. But if you are experiencing any type of domestic violence, please, please, please call 1-800-799-7233. That is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That is a anonymous phone line, hotline, I'm so sorry, that will help you to create a plan, an escape plan safely. Please make sure that you have someone you love and can trust as you plan your escape route out of this situation. I'll leave that number up for a few more moments as we go ahead and bring the episode as we bring tonight's show to a close. Again, the phone number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. Oh. Tonight wasn't so bad for me. I did tear up a little bit, but let me roll into my final thoughts when it comes to domestic violence. Men and women are both victims of domestic violence, not just women. When you speak about domestic violence, please don't always constitute it as physical, because it could always start out verbal and emotional. And that's just abuse within itself. We have to start recognizing the signs, and we have to start recognizing what's healthy in relationships and what's not. One thing I want men and women to know is stop trying to love the red flags out of people. Recognize who they are from the beginning. Stop sticking around trying to change them, thinking that they're going to change. They're not. Only thing they do is they switch victims. If you are experiencing a domestic violence situation, please reach out to me. Please, I want to help you get out of your situation. One thing about me, any conversation that we have, I don't share with anyone. Male, female. I pray that whatever situation or circumstances you're in, you're able to make it out alive, because I do not want to see you on TV. I know it's easier said than done. I know it's easy to say, oh, leave, 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 but it's hard to go. Because in these relationships, these men or these women have made you feel unworthy. They've made you feel as if no one else is going to want you but them. They've completely destroyed your self-esteem. They've completely destroyed who you are as a person. But just know that in time, all wounds do heal. I'm a living witness. Even though I carry that scar with me every day, I stopped allowing that to define who I am. I'm worthy to give and receive love. I'm a beautiful woman. And I want you men and I want you women to know that you are valuable, you are worthy, you are beautiful. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Yes, domestic violence happens every day. But we as a people, we have to step in and we have to help. We have to be safe spaces for the people that are in these situations right now. If someone comes to you and tells you, please hold that tight to your house, to your heart. I'm so sorry, to your heart. If that person that they're trying to get away from asks, please don't tell them where they are. But I also say to the world, please, 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 please provide protection for domestic abuse survivors, men and women. Because again, I can go right back here. 53.8% of Black women and 56.1% of Black men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner. You have 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men that have been injured by an intimate partner. These are real facts. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner, whether it's a slap, whether it's they've thrown something at a loved one. Men have experienced this just like women. But I say this to my fellas, if you are in a domestic violence relationship, please don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid to talk about it. Please don't be embarrassed to tell your story. I pray that whoever is sitting in a situation like this, I pray you're able to make it out. I pray that you find the resources that are available for you to get out of your situation. Again, don't forget 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact, sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking. We see this. We have to do better, America. We have to do better protecting our victims instead of victim blaming. Regardless of what you say or what you've done to a person doesn't equate to a person putting their hands on you. If it happens once, it'll happen again. They don't change, they just change victims. And I'm going to end with that. Just know that I love you. I'm praying for you. And I pray that you make it out of your situation alive. All right. So for tomorrow night's episode, again, I will be talking about police brutality. That was actually supposed to be the topic for tonight, but I forgot. I had switched the dates. So y'all forgive me on that. But tomorrow night, I will be talking about police brutality. I will again be bringing y'all the story on Stephen Clay Perkins. Again, the young man that was killed by the police in Decatur, Alabama. I will also be bringing y'all the story on Johnny Holman, who was a 62-year-old deacon who was killed by an Atlanta police officer. So that is tomorrow night's conversation. We are going to be talking again about police brutality. This keep happening. What can we do, America? But that's tomorrow night's conversation. We're not going to even get into that tonight. But I do want to say thank y'all so much for joining me on another episode for tuning in. I'm so sorry for tuning in to another episode of Black Girl Interrupted. You already know it's your girl, Ashley. I'm always bringing y'all some of the most beautiful yet intimate conversations. Yes, they could be a little triggering, but they're much needed topics, much needed conversations that we need to have in order to heal and bring some type of love back into the Black community. So on that note, I do want to say I love you guys. God bless you again. Happy Tuesday. I hope each and every person enjoys the rest of their night. Again, tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, 9:30 Eastern Time. Again, you can catch me streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube. You can always go back and check out the past episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Deezer, wherever you listen to your podcast. Just type in Black Girl Interrupted and you can always catch up on all past episodes. So on that note, I just want to say I love you guys again. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Black Girl Interrupted podcast. And I will see you guys tomorrow night. Same time, same place. Love you. Bye.